Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Warcraft video. What if I told you that right now the Infinite Dragonflight are attempting to free Yogg, that they are also attempting to erase the Legion expansion from existence, and that they're also working to bring in the second end time. Now they may seem like just random enemies who exist only to give us time-traveling content, and while that may have been the case at one point, the unified picture of their lore combined with the events of the most recent patch really does paint a bleak picture indeed. Now look, I'm gonna have to level with you here. As great as they are, today's sponsor Skillshare can't literally make you a master of time like the Dragonflights of Warcraft, but they can do the next best thing. They can help you use time well by learning new skills. They're an online learning community with over 25,000 courses, all for only $10 a month, and that's including courses from many of your favorite YouTube creators, as well as their own super slickly made Skillshare originals. Of course, the first 500 people who subscribe with my link will get 2 months of premium for free. Yup, for free. Now, I'd recommend checking out Fundamentals of DSLR Photography by Justin Bridges. It's a Skillshare original, so that real nice slick production is there, and I found it incredibly useful at first, and I've since actually used this course to get the rest of my team up to speed on all the camera stuff. It just gives you fantastic baseline knowledge of cameras in just over an hour. You'll really come away with a solid knowledge of something new that you can actually use in your real life. So it's great, I'd recommend it wholeheartedly. So thank you to them for sponsoring. You can get 2 months for free with my link down below. And with that, let's get into the video. So, the beginning. Aman'Thul uplifted the Bronze Dragons, giving them power over time and tasking them with the protection of the true timeline, free from interference. He said this: "Unto you is charged the great task of keeping purity of time. Know that there is only one true timeline, though there are those who would have it otherwise. You must protect it. Without the truth of time as it is meant to unfold, more will be lost than you can possibly imagine. The fabric of reality will unravel. It is a heavy task, the base of all tasks of this world, for nothing can transpire without time." The Titans gave their leader Nozdormu a vision of his own death, and with that, the Bronze Dragons were set to their task. Little did the Titans know that in showing Nozdormu his own death, they created the conditions needed for a future Nozdormu to be exploited. Tormented and fearful over his death, the death that he had seen, the old gods corrupted him, creating Morozond, who had found the Infinite Dragonflight. Where the Bronze Dragons would fight to preserve the natural timeline, the Infinites would fight to create their own timeline, one that was well in line with the desires of the old gods who led to their creation. Morozond in the Cataclysm says this:
"You crawl unwitting like a blind, writhing worm towards endless madness and despair. I have witnessed the true end time. This is a blessing you simply cannot comprehend."
So, Morozond claims to have seen something far worse than what we see in the End Time dungeon, where the aspects are all dead and the old gods rule. And that begs the question, what did he see? Well, it could just have been an old god-triggered vision. The old gods constantly portray themselves to be the best option that we have, saying that, well, basically death itself is the ultimate enemy. That's at least what we think so far. Indeed, in Warcraft, many people side with the old gods because they are convinced that the old gods are the only logical option given what else is out there. This, of course, is probably just maddening trickery, but as always, there could be a kernel of truth to it. And also, as an aside, Morozond has this to say:
"You know not what you have done, Aman'Thul. What I have seen."
So yeah, he directly mentions Aman'Thul far before I think any other major boss did, and that really does, well, let's just say it prompts a discussion for another day that I'm currently working on. So, Nozdormu falls to the old god corruption, he becomes Morozond, he forms the Infinite Dragonflight, who we first see in the Burning Crusade. So, let's talk about the first big wave of Infinite Dragonflight actions against us. The Infinites started to strike hard during the Burning Crusade, to the point where the often seclusive Bronze Dragons decided to seek our aid. In the Black Morass dungeon, they attempt to prevent the opening of the Dark Portal. According to the Keepers of Time, if this had have been successful, the Alliance would have descended into civil war, and the nations of Azeroth would not have been able to band together against the Legion, which would have led to life on the planet being wiped out. Now here's the thing, that's really hard to reconcile with a modern understanding of the Infinite Dragonflight. After all, at this time, their leader was just referred to as an unnamed master, who would of course later on be revealed as Morozond. That revelation came at the same time that Blizzard told us that he was corrupted by the old gods, something that was in line with the direction of the Cataclysm story. The old gods, of course, want nothing less than a Legion victory. After all, technically, they helped us with Xal'atath during the Legion expansion, and we know that Sargeras' goal of, the reason why he'd want to destroy Azeroth was specifically so the old gods could not corrupt her. So, this one is a little bit strange. It just doesn't line up with what the old gods want. As for Thrall's escape, well, once again, it would prevent the formation of the modern Horde. But again, with our more modern understanding, we could say that Morozond is an old god ally with access to the Timeways, meaning that he knew Thrall would help to destroy Deathwing, and that stopping his rise would be a helpful thing. But still, it's not ideal, and overall the Burning Crusade links just are not great. But you know what? The Wrath of the Lich King ones really are. First, Wrath essentially reveals that Nozdormu is the leader of the Infinite Flight. We use a device that is supposed to catch the leader of the Infinite Flight in the Bronze Dragon Shrine, but instead, it reveals Nozdormu, who, at the time, had been trapped in the Timeways. Of course, we later find out that he was trapped because of an old god trap. Past this, though, the Culling of Stratholme instance actually makes sense from an old god perspective, and it ties mostly into a dropped Wrath of the Lich King storyline. You see, in Wrath, there was supposed to be much more of a link between the Lich King and Yogg-Saron, more of an antagonistic relationship. Now, some of that is there, but not as much as Blizzard had first hoped, and that is from an official Blizzard post. We know that ICC is, of course, built on Yogg-Saron's crystallized blood, and we know that Yogg-Saron's theme plays right as Bolvar puts the Helm of Domination on. But anyway, Chronicle reveals to us that the Lich King wanted to unite the planet in Undeath, thinking that it was a surefire way to fend off external threats, such as the Legion and the Void. And this sort of does make sense because undead beings seem to be very resistant to Void corruption. So, in stopping Arthas in the Culling of Stratholme, he probably would have accomplished this. But things, of course, really kick off during the Cataclysm when one of the Guardians of the Caverns of Time is infinite corrupted, and more importantly, the entire situation with Nozdormu. So, in the expansion's tie-in novel, Nozdormu reveals that he is Morozond, the leader of the Infinite Flight, that is a future him. He says that to Thrall. We later need to get the Dragon Soul to stop Deathwing, but we're unable to go back to when the Dragon Soul basically was made because something is blocking Nozdormu from accessing the timeline. When we go to stop this anomaly, we find Morozond, and the two face off. Of course, we defeat Morozond, and then with the Dragon Soul recovered, Deathwing is defeated, but in that process, the Dragon aspects lose their powers, supposedly because their task had been complete. Now here's the thing, that makes no sense. The dragons were uplifted to protect Azeroth against old god corruption, yet it was corrupted because of one of them, so that is saying that they were created in order to stop themselves, which is a bit nonsensical unless Aman'Thul is playing crazy four-dimensional chess. So therefore, my read in this is simply that they had to use all of their energy, all of their power to defeat Deathwing, and then in doing so, they weakened themselves greatly and semi-permanently. Because of this, currently, the Bronze Dragonflight of the modern era has a reduced access to the timelines. They can't alter as much, they're simply far weaker. Now, a group of them is particularly annoyed about this, and indeed, they are annoyed by the Bronze's just unwillingness to play with the timelines. Kairos Dormu was one of this group. He powered up the Vision of Time artifact of his creation using heroes during Mists of Pandaria, and eventually used it to send Garrosh Hellscream back in time, and that is a process that was also sort of aided by Infinite Dragons attacking the court during his trial. Now, it's worth knowing that Kairos was independent of the Infinites, and of course, we all know that he was killed immediately by Garrosh when they arrived in Draenor. But overall, the Infinites wanted Garrosh to break free. It's kind of hard to tell why they would want Warlords of Draenor to happen, though we do know that Archimonde ends up possessing an old god item from the Emerald Nightmare, so that could go a little bit deeper, but it's kind of an aside to this video. One important note, though, is that Kairos in his Vision of Time artifact shows us a number of visions. Now, most of them are related to the Mists expansion, but one of them is very different. It shows Kairos, or at least someone who looks like him in his elf form, standing by the corpse of Sora Dormi, who is the prime consort of Nozdormu. Now, if you go back to the Dungeon Journal description of Morozond, it says that a tormented Nozdormu was corrupted. Well, what if this is one of the things that tormented him? What if the desire to save her overrode his duty to preserve time? Yeah, I mean, if you think too much about it, you do kind of get lost in time loop BS, so let's just move on to the 3 more recent and pretty crazy events that I teased at the start of this video. Black Temple time walking is their first major recent attempt to mess about with the timelines. We find plans for the raid in Mar Doom, but we find that they've been updated, and here's what the Time Walker has to say. What's strange is that the new plan seems better than the original. It's unlikely that this is the Legion's doing. Illidan surely would have detected any fell manipulation, so if not the Legion, who is behind this? And I think it's very clear. It's the Infinite Dragons. They attempted to use their timeway access to supply a better plan for the Mar Doom raid. Perhaps one that would have had Illidan's demon hunters return home faster, likely being able to fend off the raid party that imprisoned them and defeated Illidan, meaning that Illidan would have been able to carry out his plan, a plan that very well could have taken down the Legion, which would have gotten rid of one of the major threats to Azeroth, and therefore a major threat to the Old God's plans. And then the next time that we see the Infinites meddle with us is Ulduar. After performing our investigation, we are told this. Well, this is worrisome. The Titan locks holding Yogg in place seem to have been artificially aged. These should have held for at least another 40 millennia. The only ones with such power are dead, aren't they? Or perhaps no. That doesn't make any sense at all. So, yeah, this means the Infinite Flight are attempting to break the prison that is holding Yogg. Now, given how N'Zoth is essentially free, that would be very bad indeed. Now, the next major instance of infinite activity is patch 8.1.5, where Tailors meet Timeweaver Delorme, who is the last of the Synchronous Tailors, a group who make sure the fabric of time stays mended. Throughout the questline, she becomes weaker and weaker as we discover that alternate versions of her are being killed. We eventually find out that this is all being done by the Infinite Shade of Delorme. Now, we fight this shade in the Bronze Dragon Shrine, and we do manage to defeat the shade, all while we bear witness to a battle between the Bronze and the Infinites overhead. Yet we defeat the Shade, but Delorme is weakened, to the point where she can no longer mend time, with that responsibility falling to the player. Though it is worth noting that the Time Walkers still are around, so technically not all is lost. But still, you get the point. The Infinite Dragonflight are destroying those who can mend time. And then, of course, they're trying to destroy time and shape it to their will. Now, with the Bronze Dragons weakened and the last of the Synchronous Tailors taken out, there's pretty much only the Time Walkers left, leaving us really more open to a second end time. Stopping the first end time cost the Bronze Dragons much of their power. Indeed, it greatly weakened all of the Dragonflights, and seemingly in a way that we can't really reverse. All but the Infinite. Sure, we defeated Morozond, but the Infinite are clearly still fully operational at full power. Of course, they're able to manipulate time. A Morozond is still out there, and the Nozd'umu that we have is greatly weakened. The first iteration of the Hour of Twilight cost our Dragonflights almost everything, and it somewhat knocked back the Old Gods, but it actually left the Infinites pretty much just fine because of time travel BS. Combined with them being increasingly active against us, even in BFA, and you have all the markings of a future plot thread. After all, Syntharia is alive, there's enough Twilight eggs in existence to create a big army. Rathian's people are hunting for the Dragon Isles, and there likely is a new source of black dragon eggs, uncorrupted ones at that. While much of this is in the background through small quests here and there, it very much is there, and it's placed with intention. It's only a matter of when Blizzard choose to cash this in, and given the connections between the Old Gods and the Infinite Flight, I suspect it will be sooner rather than later. So there you go, a big juicy video on the Infinite Dragonflight. There's a few things I decided to gloss over, a few things that I think I decided to simplify, but at the end of the day, it's all just trying to present like one nice, simple, unified version of the Infinite Dragonflight storyline, which is a bit more challenging than you'd think because it has just been spread out willy-nilly everywhere across multiple expansions. Pretty fun though, and I think this is definitely something we'll see pretty soon. Let me know what you think about this storyline down below. I'd be dead keen to hear what you've all got to think. And yeah, with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.